How curious should I be about the motives of my friends?
I mean, you're going to be disappointed. It doesn't mean don't trust anybody. It means don't trust everybody. The first bit of intel you get is usually wrong.
What would you call fertile soil for an extremist?
This university.
How do we discern what's true? Who has the answers?
Today, that's difficult.
We're going to USC's Sol Price School of Public Policy to talk to our next guest, Dr. Erroll Southers. This guy is an expert on counterterrorism and public safety, which means he spends his time solving big problems that I don't know anything about. Nominated by Barack Obama, he ran security at LAX, and not only did he work for Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor of California, but they were lifting buddies for bodybuilding competitions. Here's what I want to know. The world is more complicated than ever, and every day I'm exposed to news that makes me feel scared or angry. How do I know who I can trust, and how do I avoid being manipulated myself? Let's go find out. I want to ask you what might be a dumb question.
Mm-hmm. No such thing, but go ahead.
Why am I not a terrorist?
Well, you're not a terrorist because you've obviously been brought up in a way to think critically. Your discretionary decision-making is good. And you haven't yet run into people who may want to, let's just say, recruit you into another way of thinking. One of the things that works, if I were going to target someone like you, my objective would be making you feel like you have less than you have because of someone else. Otherism is huge and critical to radicalization. I don't have that degree because somebody else got in. I don't have that car because somebody else bought it. I don't have that job because they gave it to somebody lesser than me. Now you start to feel like it's their fault that you are where you are. Even though you're in a great place, you'd be in a better place if it weren't for them. And it's powerful. It is absolutely critical to that radicalization pathway.
Let's take a hypothetical person. We can name him Cameron. Cameron's 13 years old. He lives in the suburbs, and we know in this universe he's going to become a terrorist. What happened in Cameron's life that made him into a violent extremist? What were his parents like? What kind of friends did he choose?
I'm going to say it this way. For every one you meet, you'll meet a new one. There is no checklist. There are no milestones. I have a friend who's a former neo-Nazi whose dad was a physician, grew up wanting for nothing. And then I have friends who grew up treated like garbage and were bullied, who went the same pathway. Two totally diametrically opposed upbringings, and it won't matter. As long as in the end, they believe that they can be altruistic, they believe that they are going to be special, that there's a ideology that's going to make them a better person and make, in some instances, a group better. But getting there, there's no way to know that that's going to happen. There isn't any way to know. One thing they do have in common too is they dehumanize the people that they target. That is a common trait.
What are the buckets that these extremists fall into?
Well, now it's almost like they have a menu. In fact, some of the ideologies that are out there are almost counterintuitive. But they fall into buckets of, initially it was really simple. It was either usually religious or racial or what I would call issue-oriented groups. Anti-immigrant, anti-government, anti-Semitic, what I call the anti-category. Now you have groups that they'll check off boxes for numerous categories because it works for them. But those are the three easy buckets in the beginning: religion, race, and what I call issue-oriented groups.
Sure. I've heard you say before, let me ask it like this. What would you call fertile soil for an extremist?
This university.
Explain.
I want people who want to learn, who are willing to listen, who want to excel, who want to be different, who want to be special. Those are all the things that an extremist believes they get from that ideology they embrace. Someone's paying attention to them. They're not just the average person anymore. And they're going to do something that they consider noble. So fertile soil for this, there are two actually. One is voluntary and one's not. I would say colleges and universities and correctional institutions. And I've been in both. Spent a lot of time in the prisons doing research on a number of plots that were going to be carried out here in the United States, and that's where guys got radicalized. In there, it wasn't so much wanting to be different or to excel, it was basically a need for survival. You had 3 basic food groups I used to jokingly describe in prison. You had blacks, whites, Hispanics. So you had the Black Guerrilla family, you had Nuestra Familia, which was the Mexican mafia, and then you had the Aryan Brotherhood, and that's who was running everything. If you wanted to survive in some of those institutions across the country, you wound up in one of those groups as your umbrella, as your protection. And sometimes embracing the ideology and becoming radicalized.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And you say that a university is similar ground to that.
Oh,
to prison.
Absolutely. I want a mind that I can, if I'm going to recruit, I want a mind I can shape. And that's what people are here for.
Sure.
To grow academically, to grow intellectually. Well, that same growth intellectually can be embracing an extremist ideology.
A malleable mind.
Absolutely.
I've heard you describe the personality of somebody who becomes an extremist as a altruistic loner in a supportive environment.
Absolutely. You need that supportive environment to be able to do it. And without that enabling environment, you're lost. The difference between now and 20, 30 years ago is I can believe something and I can get online and have 1,000 people who believe just the same thing I do that I've never met. That's what makes it so dangerous now. But that's who you want, is someone who believes they're doing something noble and doing something good.
Can you give some examples of groups that are doing that actively today? Who are you watching right now?
Who am I not watching right now? These groups haven't just popped up. These groups have always been here. I've always said a couple things. Extremism based on race is probably the most powerful. And those groups are groups that, and I'm talking from a space of knowledge in terms of the formers, I call them, who are in some of these groups. It's all about dehumanization. And so you've got groups now who believe that because of immigrants, because of people of color, because of women, that they're losing their place. There's a whole theory out there called replacement theory, where white males believe they're being replaced in societies like the United States by other people. And it's gotten incredible traction over the last several decades. And it works. There used to be a time clock. Years ago, they believed that whites would be numerically less than minorities in America by the year 2050. And there were white supremacist sites that had time clocks on their homepages counting down to the year 2050.
Really?
It got changed years ago after a census was done to say they had accelerated it to like 2030 to make people even more afraid. So there you have that whole notion of we don't want to become like certain countries in Europe where they have a large immigrant population because they're being displaced. That gets a lot of traction. So I watch those groups. I'm watching the anti-government groups. They've always had traction back to the 80s when I was first in the FBI, about the government controlling everything, about the government being controlled by other people, about taking everyone's guns away, about setting up compounds across the country that would be almost internment camps. Tax information was basically being put into a database. There's a group called Sovereign Citizens, and they don't like to be called that. In fact, I met a sovereign once, which is really hard to do, and I'll call it that for now. He told me when I first met him, and of all the people I've met, I had no problem meeting Islamists. I had no problem meeting former neo-Nazis. You could not meet a sovereign because the most important reason they're sovereigns is they're not paying taxes. So as a former law enforcement officer, to meet a sovereign, I'm meeting somebody that the IRS might be looking for. So they're always very careful.
Right.
But I did meet one, and he said, if you're going to do anything, you tell your FBI friends to call us the Freedom Movement. So for the sake of argument, let's just call it the Freedom Movement. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't believe in the government. So they have their own driver's license. They have their own license plates. They believe that the only possible authority of law enforcement in the country are sheriffs, which in their mind, because they're elected, don't report to anybody.
Really?
Yes.
That's not true, is it?
Well, sheriffs are elected. There is a sheriff's movement that's I'll just say quite interesting in terms of where they believe they fit in the organizational chart. But the sovereigns would believe that if I'm going to listen to anybody, it might be a constitutional sheriff. But in their world, still, law enforcement doesn't matter. They don't believe you have the right to stop them. Traffic stops are always very dangerous with them. They're usually armed because they believe in the Second Amendment. There was a very, very bad shootout years ago of two officers who got killed by a father-son sovereign team who was traveling the country putting on $100 a head lectures, teaching people how to not pay taxes and not get caught.
Wow.
And these two officers stopped them. And one of them's last name is Dirt because his father was chief. Long story short, they stopped the dad. The dad got out of the car. The son stayed in the car. They're focused on dad at the back of the car, and the son comes out of the side of the car with an AK-47, and he kills both of them.
Goodness gracious.
And Chief Dirt went out there to the scene, not knowing two of his officers had been killed in the line of duty, and didn't know when he got there one of them was his son. So he then started traveling the country to educate law enforcement on the sovereign citizen movement because that's how dangerous they were. That's another group who we look at. So we look at people who don't believe in the government, believe there's too much government. That's another whole group that's out there. But you can name, one of the things I found out in the prisons is if you're in prison, everybody has right to what they call time in the chapel. You could come up with a religion of your own and you'd have a right to have your own time in the chapel.
Is that something people do?
Well, there are some groups in prison that, let's just say their religion is a very small number, so they do get that time. But what it does is it gives them unsupervised time in the chapel, essentially, because the chaplains aren't always there. And so it's another fertile ground for, as I said, you've got race and you've got religion. And in the prisons, the religion is powerful for some groups. So there are a lot of groups we're watching. It doesn't mean that every extremist group is a domestic terrorist organization. Extremism is not illegal. Violent extremism is illegal. And so that's where we have to draw the line.
Would ICE fit the bill of a violent extremist group?
I would have to say that there are people who might define it that way because they are organized. They are committing, in some instances, crimes. They do seem to be, the reason I wouldn't call them a violent extremism group, because there's no ideology that's attached to that. Unless you want to say in their mind that their allegiance to the United States is the ideology, I wouldn't go that far.
Anti-immigration?
Anti-immigration, that's a good question. It would be an interesting debate. Because there are those who would say you're in that organization because you're anti-immigrant, but you're swearing an oath to the Constitution, which is counterintuitive to what you're doing. So that makes it difficult. It'd be an interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
But I wouldn't label them that way. You may get to that point eventually, but I wouldn't initially label it that way. Unlawful? Yeah. Unconstitutional? We've seen demonstrations of that. But a violent extremism organization? Again, we'd have to define that ideology.
Sure. What's a clear line that they would have to cross over into the designation of a violent extremist group?
I would say that if they were committing these acts without the belief that they reported to anyone, would probably do it. At least now it's under the guise of being in the Department of Homeland Security, which has a secretary, which sits in the president's cabinet, which allegedly Congress can have some oversight. That's becoming blurred. That's a great question. It's becoming blurred. I'll say that way at this time for now. The oversight seems to be, I'll say from the times that I was working very closely with DHS, the oversight is certainly missing. And there's a lot of oversight for DHS. The TSA, I can't even begin to tell you how many committees have oversight for the TSA. It's double figures for everything. So now that you've got what appears to be a lack of oversight, would certainly blur the line with regards to, are they moving into that territory of being their own autonomous group?
We see this theme in people who become extremists that you're talking about, where they have this need to feel special. You're a part of the bodybuilding community. You've seen how now, with the rise of the internet, everybody seems to be in perfect shape. We compare ourselves to one another on social media. There's this idea of gymflation. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
So the idea is, years ago, if you benched 225 pounds, that would be pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Now you go online and you see people with crazy physiques and they're putting up 3 plates like it's nothing, and 225 is the bare minimum. Is this kind of mentality where we're posting the greatest parts of our life on social media and we can see so many more people all the time, dangerous for the rise of more violent extremists who want to feel special?
I think it's dangerous for more than just violent extremists. I think it's dangerous for people in general. We have this notion of what people look like, of shaming people who don't look like that, of shaming people who can't bench 225, of everybody looking like a bodybuilder. There are movements out there that fitness, there are extremist movements out there, and I'm not going to give them any airtime right now, where mixed martial arts is important to them. Being in the gym is important to them. They thrive on their physicality to get things done because they're going to become violent. So that is a part of it. But I do think, to your point, it is dangerous that we have this image that people believe is true. And now with AI being able to do almost anything, I wouldn't be surprised if people look at photos of, Arnold, my friends, myself, and say, is that AI? Not understanding how many years, hours, months of eating the way we did, training the way we did, living the way we did to get like that, to think, is that real or not? Because there's an instant gratification today. If I want it, I can just create it. Well, unfortunately, that's bled over into physicality. It's bled over into intelligence as an intellect. It's bled over into careers. I mean, I meet people today who think that they're going to join an organization like the FBI and be on SWAT next week.
Wow.
Because it's all instant gratification. Why not? That's what they do in the movies.
What does that process look like? How long does that take, just for the people who don't know?
Well, first, I have a former student who was a sniper in the United States Army when he came to this university, left here, did go to the FBI. He's extremely successful. He's been there 12 years now. He's still not on SWAT. And he's loving his career, but he's not on SWAT. It's a process. It's a selection process. It's almost like trying out for the NFL.
Sure.
In terms of physicality, shooting, and decision making. And in my case, there was an opening on my team, and I tried out and I made it. And stayed on the team. So it was just a process. But it's a family, like anything else. And I was accepted, and we bonded, and we did some pretty incredible things together, and we took care of each other.
Do you find that the rise of artificial intelligence and that instant gratification makes the result of real hard work, you and Arnold and your group's bodybuilding success that came from real hours in the gym? Now somebody can take a photo of themselves and say, add 50 pounds of lean muscle. Does that make real hard-earned accomplishments more impressive, or does it negate their value?
I think it makes it more impressive. But what it also does is it gives that person who's doing it, as in the imagery, this belief that it's real. And unfortunately, they don't get any closer to really doing it than they normally would. I always used to tell people, if everybody could look like this, they would. That's how hard it is. It's a lot more than being in a gym, eating right, living right. I used to tell people 85% of bodybuilding is nutrition. Anybody, and I say this I don't say this flippantly, anybody can go in the gym every day. Going in the gym every day and making improvement to the level where you're an elite athlete is very, very different. And I used to say, look at all the people in your gym this year, and look at all the people a year from now who haven't changed at all. In police work, that's called a clue. So there you have it. But yeah, I think it minimizes the importance of dedication and commitment. And that's what I find lacking today is people, they have instant gratification. Dedication and commitment. You asked me earlier about circle of friends. Well, that circle of friends are people that have been around me and people like Arnold and others for a long time and didn't get there lightly and don't ever leave. That's how that whole bodybuilding and physicality component of a person's life has to take place. It doesn't get there overnight, and it never really leaves. It's a lifestyle.
Do you find that bodybuilding has informed a lot of the rest of your career?
Yeah, I will say it started with wrestling when I was in middle school, and then through high school and part of college, and there's the discipline. It's a discipline I still have. Like you asked me, was I in the gym this morning between 4:30 and 5? Yes. It has informed a lot of what I do. You'll find that the structure that you get from that, you never lose it. It's just a lifestyle. I mean, he's at Gold's Gym every morning still. He's in his 70s. Why not? So yeah, it does inform a lot of what you do. And it also makes your life and your work easier because you know how to structure things. You look at everything as a marathon instead of a sprint. And I always tell people, honor the process. You'll get there. Just honor the process.
Mm. You find that you need to introduce discomfort to your life to make the uncomfortable parts of life more bearable?
Yeah, I would say discomfort's a good way to put it. Every time you're training for a contest, and I used to start about 15 weeks out, boy, when I'd hit week 5 to go, I'd be, why am I doing this stupid stuff? Who does this to get on stage for 90 seconds to win a trophy? And then who does this? And then you win. And the next day when you're eating pizza, you're thinking about the next contest already. So it goes away really quick.
What's that feeling at the pinnacle when you win?
There's hardly anything like it because there's so many good people in the world. It's indescribable. You're real special. I mean, when you think about the millions of people that go in the gym, and then you pare it down to the ones who are serious athletes, then the ones who are professional athletes, then the ones who are competitive bodybuilders who actually get on stage, it is a very, very small percentage. And then of that percentage, the ones that win, the ones that win in Southern California it's a very elite group of people.
What do they have in common?
The notion that they can win and that no one's going to train harder than they do. Every time you're in that gym, you're thinking about the other 15 to 20 guys that are going to be on stage at the same time and what they're doing. That motivates you. That gives you all the motivation you need. It does.
You're getting into their heads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's special. It really is. And that's why I didn't train at Gold, because half the guys I would compete against were at Gold. If I ever went over there, I was covered up, sweatshirts, sweats. They never knew what I looked like until I got to weigh in on prejudging day.
Okay. I like that.
Yep.
It's a good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Stayed away from them. I didn't want them seeing me progress. I didn't want them to know I was going to be there. It was more fun that way.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever catch the look on their face when they...
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, most people, because as you saw my photo in the book, I didn't look like I weighed 175 pounds.
Absolutely not.
And when I got in a lineup to weigh in for the middleweights, they were like, you got to be a light heavyweight. I go, nope. And I would just smile because it was a lot of muscle to be at that body weight. And I was about 100. I usually ran between 174 and a half and 176. 176, 81 kilos is the cutoff.
Sure.
And I used to come within 2 pounds of that. And then after the prejudging, you can eat. So, you know, a couple of pounds between that and the night show. And then, of course, 2 days later, you're up 15 pounds. So it didn't matter. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I was one of the smallest guys in there as a bodybuilder. There were female bodybuilders who weighed more than me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Big people.
I've seen the photo in the book. You were nowhere close to small.
Well,
let's be clear.
Comparatively speaking.
You're next to Arnold.
Well, as Arnold used to joke with me and say, Earl, you've won a lot of titles, but you never won the Mr. Universe. So that was a running joke between him and me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
But to even be in that conversation.
Oh, believe me, it was.
What a dream.
Yeah. I mean, when you were competing in Southern California as a bodybuilder, you were competing with the best people in the world. So I felt really honored to not only be able to do that, but to have these guys coaching me practically. When I went to contests, the whole first 2 rows would be guys from the gym, and they're all Mr. Universe winners, and they're all your friends. So it was fun.
What was that community like? Is there anything like that in your life now?
It's sort of like the law enforcement community. It's like when I was on SWAT and other specialized units. Family. We ate together, trained together. Our families got together. We understood each other because we were doing the same things. If you went downstairs at the gym, we all had Corvettes. We all had sports cars. We all had motorcycles. It was fun.
Awesome.
And we all understood the rigors of competing and dieting and how long that took and how serious it got. And we hated to lose. So it worked.
Tell me what the qualities are of those people who you want in your foxhole with you, your closest friends.
I want people that accept me for who I am. I want people that are willing to help me, that see me as an asset as much as I see them as an asset. And their support is unconditional. I've got people in my life who are with me when things were great and when things were terrible. And I've been in their lives when those situations were the same. Those are the people I want around. People that will tell me no, and people that might tell me, you need to do this without flinching. Even though I may be dead set on doing it or not, telling me something the exact opposite and telling me why, at least being honest with me. Those are real friends.
Mm.
And those are the people that I have a small circle. And it doesn't mean I've got over, like, jokingly, I looked the other day, got some ungodly number, like 5,000 people in my address book. But there's less than a dozen people that I would call to ask for an opinion, or I would call to ask, what do you think? Should I do this? Should I not? How am I doing? And I know 2 things. They're going to give me the truth and they're going to give me some direction. And there's a reason for that. It's not because I don't like people. Obviously, I got 5,000 people in the address book.
Totally.
But there's about 5 or 6 who I would call if I had to make a decision. And every time I've made a decision in my life to course correct or change my direction professionally, I've talked to those people.
Mm.
And it's been spot on right every time.
Tell me what it means to be inside the castle walls. Can you tell the story behind the title of that book?
Yeah, I was a kid who hated the police, which when people see me now, they go, "Are you serious?"
That's crazy.
3 different law enforcement agencies, and you've worked at every level of government, and you what? Yeah, I hated the police. I got profiled as a kid. It's purely due to the fact that I was black. And after a couple of times, I was having a chat with my dad, who was just an incredible human being, and he's the reason I'm here where I am today. And I was whining. And he said, Erroll, you can't change the castle from outside the moat. And I thought about it. And so there's this life now, and it's become a journey of being able to be inside these institutions and organizations in a way that I can change policy, change selection processes, change people to be what I think it should be. And that's really important. I've been very fortunate. I've had some incredible opportunities, and hopefully I've been mentored. I've mentored a lot of people to pay it forward, and hopefully they'll do the same thing. I believe that I've always had this belief from my dad. He used to always say, people are basically good until proven otherwise. And I really believe that. And I think it's in people's goodness first that we try to work with them. And in a lot of cases, you can be successful. So that's what it's all about. It's getting in. These are not bad organizations. There are bad people. People make up organizations. I'm always humored by people say, I hate the government. You know what? You're the government. And when people understand that and stop throwing rocks against the wall and get inside, they can be the change you're looking for. And that's why I'm still here on a university campus. I believe that every day I look at people who walk across Hahn Plaza in front of my building who are going to be change makers in the future.
Absolutely. So you would agree with your dad after these years in public policy and in the university space that getting inside the castle walls is the most effective way to affect change?
I do. You can't make effective change from the outside, but it's not easy. I mean, you're going to go in there. You're not going to be embraced by some of the people in the castle. And those people that were throwing rocks against the building, now they're throwing rocks at you.
So tell me about how somebody who is outside of the castle walls and wants to make a change can get inside of that castle.
Well, first, mentors. Have someone mentor you who's in that space you want to be in. I have students who come to me all the time who want to go to government, who want to go to organizations, who want to apply to things like the FBI, et cetera. And I talk to them all the time. So that's important. You need to understand what it's like. Don't accept what you see on TV as what it's like. There is a Jason Bourne. I will admit, I've lived out all my Jason Bourne fantasies, okay? I'm the aberration. I'm not the rule when it comes to some of these organizations. But in all seriousness, talk to someone who's there. Find out what it's really like. I always say that to people. I say, for people who want to be police officers, I say, have you taken a ride along? Do that. If you talk to an FBI agent? Do that. If you met a member of Congress, find out what it's really like to be on a plane, if you're in California, every Monday, or days in between, every single week, for every week of your term. Do you want to do that? Campaigning, meeting people, taking heat. Find out what it's like. So that's what it takes for people to do that.
How do we find those people?
They're here. I mean, that's the easy part is they're identifiable. I'm going to tell you what Arnold told me once when I was bodybuilding, and Sean Ray was a huge friend and changed my life. And I mean, if you're going to be a bodybuilder, you got to be honest. So, I mean, I had a couple of contests where I didn't win and I needed to bring my legs up. And Sean was just somebody I knew. I have a photo at home of him because we kind of look alike. He is my look-alike partner, and he signed it. He's a former Mr. Universe, Mr. America, and, numerous pro titles. And I was talking to Arnold one day. I said, I want to go talk to Sean. He goes, go talk to him. Call him up. And I did. And I went to his house. And the rest was history. That's the approach I have taken to life. I've said to people, look, there's 2 things you got to do. 1, reach out and see if you can talk to them. 2, If they say no, and Arnold said this to me, if they say no, you know more than you did 5 minutes ago. That they weren't an option. So reach out to them. They're human beings. They put their pants on one leg at a time like we do. And as soon as you understand that, and I've been really fortunate in my life to meet presidents, prime ministers, congressmen, senators, leaders of other countries, and I've approached them as people like you. I don't treat them special. And that's probably gone a lot further than I would have ever thought because of that notion that they're just people. Respectful. I'm always respectful. But I don't treat someone like I'm looking up. I treat someone like I'm looking at them. And it's always worked.
I love that. It's awesome. It's inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, the same as I've had in the case right now of hundreds of people here at this university. I've had very large numbers of people work with me in other organizations. But notice I always say people who work with me. I never say people who work for me. And that's how I treat people. I want to hear from the custodian in my building the same as I want to hear from the president of an institution, because they both have opinions and they both know things that I don't know.
What do all of the great leaders that you've had the opportunity to work with have in common?
They listen. They listen. I mean, like I said, presidents, CEOs, electeds, at the local level, state level, they listen. They're good listeners. And it doesn't matter whether it's government or any other occupation. They know how to listen. That's really important. I think your best leaders are the ones who know how to do that. And the person they're listening to understands they're being heard for real. They're not just standing there taking in what they're saying seconds away from getting on their phone again.
Right.
Really important.
Huge.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another maybe broad question.
Okay.
That you are uniquely qualified to answer.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know who we can trust?
Today, that's difficult. I mean, you're going to be disappointed. It doesn't mean don't trust anybody. It means don't trust everybody. Trust is earned. Same as respect. It's earned. It comes over time. And as Maya Angelou used to say, just remember that what a person does the first time when they do it, believe them. That's who they are. I used to say people don't change. I'm a little flexible on that. I used to be pretty inflexible on that. When people do you the wrong way, in my days past, I was done with them. But trust is earned. And unfortunately, as we talked about our instant gratification world that we live in now, they meet someone and 5 minutes later, they're spilling their entire life to them thinking that this person's going to be wonderful when you never know who they are. You just don't know who they are. Trust takes time. And when I talk about friends, John, I'm talking about people I've known for decades. And they've always been there. That's trust.
In a world full of disinformation, how do we discern what's true? I find that for my generation, among those of us who really care about the truth, that discernment alone is exhausting.
It is. And I have to say the only way you can really do this is to have multiple sources of information that you deem credible. That's the only way to do it. I find myself now more than ever looking at something and saying, is that real?
Right.
That's where we are.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
But I will say this, because I used to say this to my students all the time, especially in my homegrown violent extremism class and my Homeland Security class. The first bit of intel you get is usually wrong.
Why is that?
because you never know what it's driven by.
That's a rule.
That's my hard and fast rule.
The first piece of intelligence
is wrong.
that you get is wrong.
Don't run with that. And I'm retained by a network. I'm an analyst. I get calls from networks all over the world when events happen, usually terrorist events or acts of extreme violence or war. And when I hear something and they call me to go on, I will pause. Even though they want that hit, okay? They want to be first. I mean, networks out, they all want to be first.
Yeah.
I am not going to be the first guy, because what'll happen, I've told my students this, you go out there right now, 12 hours from now, you'll be trying to pull it back in. You've already fired the shot. It's not coming back in the gun. Don't do it.
And I think that this is a really important point that you're making, because right now we're exposed to so much extreme activity. We see every day in the news something about a school shooting or a plane crash or a terroristic event. In the first 48 hours of that happening, what should we be... In the first 48 hours of an event like that being publicized, who has the answers?
It's funny you should say that, because when I go on the air, the first thing I usually say, and if you've heard me say it repetitively, it's on purpose. I'll say, I don't want the speculation to get ahead of the facts. Because understand that when you're now on the air sharing something, most times you may be adding to speculation and anxiety, which doesn't do anybody any good.
And you brought up earlier that fear is a tool used by these extremists to recruit.
You're absolutely correct. The tool, the most important tool. So the first thing you've got to do is, in terms of who has the most information, I'll say this: whoever has the most information hasn't shared it with you. Okay? Which is why I say to people, whatever you've heard second and third hand is probably not true or accurate. So just pause. You don't have to be first. You do have to be right. And that's always been my theory about being on TV. I got to be right. Because once you get out there ahead of the curve, trying to be the breaking news, you may have wound up breaking your reputation.
Absolutely. And this is from the perspective of somebody who is a voice for a lot of these events. But I would say that probably applies too to just those of us who are consumers of them.
It does.
Developing our own opinions.
Exactly. The one thing I've heard people say about me that I always am really happy about is they say, whenever I hear you, you're reasonable. And I like to leave people with a bit of optimism and a bit of advice. I don't like to leave people, I jokingly tell the network I'm on, I feel like Darth Vader, I only come on when it's death, destruction, violence. I said, can't I do a good story like about dogs or something?
You're the violent extremist
guy.
Yeah,
I'm the violent extremist guy. I mean, I'm always on when it's just terrible.
Sure.
And so I feel one day I'm going to walk in there in a Darth Vader costume. But in any event, I try to leave people with some hope. I try to leave people understanding that the best people possible are working on this. There's a process. We're going to find out. The one thing I used to say, and I'm always proud of this, if we're looking for somebody as an assailant or a suspect, and that person's, I used to say on the continental United States, but now I almost will say in the world, we'll find them. We have the tools, we have the talent. If we want to find somebody bad enough, we can do that. So I always say to people, just honor the process. Everybody wants to know now everything. That's the problem. It's always instant gratification. Nobody's willing to honor the process, which is why you have people that go in the gym every day and don't change.
The fear of the unknown.
And they don't want to honor the process. They want to walk in today and walk out tomorrow, Mr. Universe. That's not going to happen.
No chance. How curious should I be? We've talked a little bit about the importance of making sure your foxhole of close friends is very strictly monitored. How curious should I be about the motives of my friends? How vigilant do I need to be about my inner circle?
I think you will know when you've been taken. Again, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. You can forgive, but I wouldn't forget. So it's not to say that a person may breach your trust that you can stay with, but just understand it's happened. So how trusting should you be? You'll know. If you have to ask yourself, should I trust this person? That's the first clue. If you have to ask yourself that a second time, now it's time to wonder if they should be outside the circle.
Okay.
You're going to have people come your way, especially as you're successful these days. Look, I'm not an influencer. I don't know even what that means half the time. But you'll have people come your way. And oftentimes it'll be because they want something that you've got, or you can connect them to something they want. Wrong motivation. They don't want you for who you are to be in their lives. You don't need it. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I'm often alone. I've never been lonely. There's a big difference.
Help me understand what the difference is.
In my classified undercovers I did in the FBI, I was alone a lot by design because I couldn't go to the office. I couldn't see my friends. Still went on SWAT missions, but I couldn't, be around FBI agents in case somebody was counter-surveilling me. Never felt alone because I knew that family was there. Lonely only because nobody else was around physically. There's a difference. So that's probably the best analogy I can give you is that there's no physical presence, but you know that you've got that support group. And like I said, there's a difference between being alone. Lonely is when you're almost like despondent, depressed. And I never felt that way. I just always knew I had the support if I needed it.
As we wrap up here, what is the one thing that you want our audience to take away from this conversation?
I want people to dream big and be good people. I came from a town in New Jersey that didn't even have curbs along the curb line. And I wound up meeting and getting nominated by the President of the United States, being appointed to commissions and positions by 2 governors, getting to the administration and professorship at a major research university. And those things could only happen in this country, in my belief. In this time of everybody wanting something for themselves, I have always believed that they should dream big, and I've always believed in service. And in my case, public service. It's always been about giving back. And that's important. I want to believe that many of the students that I've been able to teach are now out there serving. There is no greater joy to me than serving and serving your country. At a time when everybody's deciding who's a patriot, my story is an American story. And I wouldn't call myself a patriot. Others have. But I'll say this, I'm no less an American than anybody else. And I have been fortunate. I'm humbled by some of the things I've been able to do. But it's because I've always had a dream. And, some people, their ceiling is another person's floor. So don't ever believe you can't do something if you don't want to. It may take longer to get there, but honor the process because it can happen. It can happen. And I say this not arrogantly. I say this with a great deal of pride. I don't know if my story would have happened in another country, but I will say this. It did happen because of all the people that came before me who went through a whole lot so I could stand on their shoulders. And that's where I am now.
Incredible. I love it. Thank you for an incredible conversation.
No, thank you. None of those questions were dumb, by the way.
Well, that's great.
Okay.
Well, I'll say this. Our next guest on the podcast is a neuroscientist.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know anything about the world of neuroscience.
Very little.
But here on the podcast, free from any judgment about asking what someone might consider a dumb question, we would love it if you would provide a dumb question for our next guest that we can ask him.
The dumb question would be, can anybody become Jason Bourne?
Okay.
Can anybody become a member of the Impossible Mission Force?
Meaning, are people's minds wired in such a way that they could not reach that level?
Yep.
Okay. I like it.
Because when you see films like that, and obviously I love films like that, and I've lived out those fantasies, everybody thinks they can do it. I want to know from a neuroscientist, is somebody pre-wired to do that?
I like that.
I only say that because of the guys and women that I know that have done it. And I'm the non-neuroscientist. I would love to meet that person, that neuroscientist, he or she, to tell them, in my mind, they're wired differently. I know I'm wired differently by the things I've been able to do. And I don't say it in a way of arrogance. I just say it as in a skill set that I've mastered. And I want to know, is that neurotic in terms of neurons? And is that real? Or am I just imagining something that I've just developed? The reason I gave you that question is you're too young. And I don't say that in a way to be insulting.
No, not at all.
The first Point Break was Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see that one.
I didn't.
Most people haven't.
Okay.
Okay, in the first Point Break, he was an FBI agent that went undercover as a surfer. He had never surfed in his life. I always tell my students, when you're going to do something in the FBI, we do a skill set on every new agent that comes in the bureau. We want to know everything you can do. Can you drive a forklift? Do you know how to surf? Do you know how to ride motorcycles? Do you know how to fix cars? Are you a plumber? Because when we have an undercover and we want a surfer, we're going to put a surfer in there.
Do people lie about what they can and can't do? Do you ever run into that problem?
No, they tell the truth because we want that. So my point is that had they done that movie correctly, Keanu Reeves would have been a real surfer.
He was already a surfer.
Correct.
Interesting.
So here's why I'm telling you this story. In addition to that, in terms of your neuroscientist, there's a test we used to take in the bureau for languages. I've seen native Spanish speakers come in because there were 5 different ways into the FBI. And one of them was language. If you spoke another language proficiently, that was the threshold: attorney, accountant, etc. I've seen native Spanish speakers not pass the Spanish test for the bureau. However, in taking that test, there's a way to test people to know if they have a proclivity toward learning languages. The FBI and the CIA are very good at that. So I have a friend who unfortunately I lost last year. He was a CIA agent. He was a rock star.
Sorry.
In fact, his book was called Left of Boom. His name was Doug Laux. We were on spy games together. And you're from Arkansas. Doug was from Ohio. They taught him to speak Pashto. He went undercover in the Taliban from Ohio. We can teach people to do that.
Because he had the predetermined proclivities for language.
According to this testing that we used to do.
Really?
I'll just say there's a language schooling, and if we want you to speak French, Arabic, German, based on the way we test you out, we can teach you any language we want.
Any language? Yep. You don't have a proclivity to, say, Latin rooted. Really? So it's a part of the brain.
We immerse you, and you come out, as he did, speaking Pashto. So that's why I gave you, can anybody be Jason Bourne? Because we know we can teach certain people, because of the way they're wired, any language we want. Is it the same way for somebody who's going to go and do something very, very dangerous in an undercover operation?
Huh. It's a great question. Not a dumb question at all.
Yeah. And that language process I'm telling you about is very real.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah,
feels
it
like
is.
insider
I wish I had that
information.
proclivity. I just don't. I wish I did.
Sure.
But, oh yeah, we can teach you any language we want.
That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You bet.
What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the conversation. If you want to see more, YouTube is linking the video it thinks you'll like the best on your screen right now. And if you liked this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment for more Dumbest Person on Campus. See ya.